and why does someone apparently find that very threatening?
Absolutely. Well, number one, I'm a high profile candidate running for governor. So if I'm actually successful, and
Uh-oh.
with the
Yeah.
message being heard by many,
Yeah.
that makes me a threat to the establishment. But with AB 392, the Stephon Clark law, Devontae Clark is his brother. And Stephon Clark was a black man that was shot and killed in his grandparents' backyard.
Sacramento.
Correct. And cops believed he had a gun in his hand, which is why, again, respecting people's right to own a firearm is essential, especially for law enforcement, because it would alleviate that threat. But they thought he had a gun in his hand when it was actually a cell phone, and they shot and killed him. And the current governor, Governor Gavin Newsom, signed a bill into law, the Stephon Clark Law, which is named after him, last summer. Since then, there's been over 130 officer-involved shootings. Almost next to none of them have been held accountable. The Clark family actually backed out of supporting a bill that was named after, a family member that they had lost. Not to mention, Black Lives Matter was one of the founding authors of the bill, and they dropped their support afterwards also. And that was mainly because these Democratic legislators, and were receiving funding from police unions and decided to gut that bill completely to make it ineffective. So we have this law in the books that's essentially supposed to reduce the amount of excessive force used by police officers, yet it's null and void because of the context of it. So again, we've seen hundreds of people get shot and killed and or assaulted by police officers here in the state. So the bill is ineffective in a sense. I spoke about this in my interview with Sam Cheney on Weaponized News, and I let him know I'm working with CalExit on making sure that if we are unsuccessful in making sure that our legislators actually sign that bill into law, reform it in its original text, that we're going to push to secede and separate the state of California away from the entire country, and that way we can have a true opportunity to enact real criminal justice reform. I believe that was threatening to them. I also said this during my interview with Devontae Clark and let him know about me working with CalExit, and to basically also let him know that this would be the best option. And he saw the Stephon Clark law as being some progress opposed to no progress at all, in his words. And my rebuttal to that was saying enough is enough. We shouldn't be accepting less from our legislators. We need to be making a demand, especially if they want our support, if they want our vote, then give me something in return. And it just can't be empty rhetoric. And we're not going to accept that anymore, the empty promises. So I let him know this is a way to make a line in the sand and say, this is it. Either you're going to do what we say, or we're going to separate and
We go nuclear.
We do it on our own. And I was introducing this idea to him, and he was becoming more embracing of it. And at this point, I believe that he is supportive of it. And again, with me having the opportunity to actually bring that to fruition, were I to be elected, that's definitely something that the powers that be would rather not see happen, because they want to continue to keep this under their control, and they want to continue to be able to dictate what we do with our own lives instead of us being free thinkers and choosing for ourselves. So I did these interviews, and I'll continue to speak about.
We're going to load this one and see if it gets taken down.
Right.
I mean, we'll find out.
Let's cross our fingers.
Hey, I'm taking a risk, but I believe in it. I believe in it. It's clearly there was a travesty here.
Absolutely.
Clearly a travesty with AB 392, the way that it was passed, and also the way it was packaged.
Yes.
I think you informed me that I was aware that they had tried this in 2019, and 2 days before they gutted the key legislation and passed it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said it was a great day for justice, and they hauled out all the politicians and said, oh, it's a great day for justice. And they ignored the fact that Dr. Kalors and BLM, as you mentioned, pulled all support, and the families pulled support.
Yes.
So the communities you're supposed to be fighting on, who were the frontline activists, said, no, I'm not having anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop California politicians, who were all Democrats. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I'm not saying that's a Democrat
Super
Party thing, but
majority.
it just the way it worked out, and they all went forward and said, justice is done. And did that strike you as, I think Sisyphean is the word, basically Janet two-faced?
Absolutely. Indeed. It was a slap in the face to not only myself, who saw the killing of Stephon Clark as being enough for me. I mean, as tragic as the killing of George Floyd was, and Breonna
Yeah.
Taylor and Duncan Lemp and countless others since then, to me, the killing of Stephon Clark was one that resonated with me on a deeper level, to where I felt like, as a man, I needed to do something. And that's why I reached out to Stephon Clark, to connect with him, to say, as tragic as this of an experience this has been for your family, work with me so we can stop this from happening to every other family. And one of the first things that I told him was, I don't want the same thing to happen to your brother to happen to my son or to me. You know, it's got to stop. And that was the last straw.
That's
me.
That's fucking. Well, I'm sorry. That was. I didn't mean to do that.
We'll bleep that out and edit it later.
That's real. That's real. You know, one of the things that, at least I see, a lot of California BLM activists do is they'll have these BLM signs, and then they'll have a kind of a modified version going Black and Brown Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And what, at least in California, and I understand it's not the case everywhere in America, but in California, there are some cities where Latinos and African Americans are getting shot by the cops at the same number.
Oh no, if not,
So,
Latinos are getting killed more.
and they're not, and as a Latino, we're not aware,
Right.
I don't see the same awareness amongst the Latinos that this is. And I go, look, there's certain cities where, I'm sorry, if you look Mexican and it's late at night, your chances of getting accidentally shot because we thought he had a gun are just as high.
Or beat. I mean,
Or beaten.
I used to live in Orange County, and one of the killings I heard about there was of a man named Furman Valenzuela. He was beat by Anaheim police and basically put into a coma where he died. Same thing that happened to Kelly Thomas, a white man, homeless man living in Fullerton.
There you go.
And
There
he
you
was
go.
beat to death by police officers. So it doesn't even take them shooting and killing you. Excessive force is excessive force. And if you are being pummeled by one officer or 15 officers, that's extreme. And it should be unnecessary. You know, we should be just as intolerant about these abuses of authority as they are when it comes to us as members of the public. So that's what I'm offering to do as a candidate, is basically apply that or require that each and every officer carries liability insurance. That way, if there is a lawsuit, it's coming out of their pocket opposed to taxpayers' pockets. And also remove the qualified immunity that protects them as officers. We actually have a police bill of rights in the state of California. So they have an extra layer of protection that gives them their own, bubble of protection versus the actual Bill of Rights, the constitutional Bill of Rights that protects us all. So why is there a need to separate them from us? And especially when they're the law enforcers. So if anything, they should be held accountable just as much as we are, if not at a higher standard.
Why do they need extra rights?
Exactly.
If they're enforcing the law, shouldn't the law work at premise?
Absolutely.
I know two people who've been beaten by the cops. One is a Caucasian man, good friend of mine up in the Bay Area, General Von Schrader. aka the Beowulf the Troll Slayer. That's his online handle. But part of the reason that he does so much online activity was he was a chef, and he was confused to be someone else, and they beat him pretty bad to the point he can't walk normally anymore
Oh my
or
God.
use his hand. So he lost his career as a chef because you have to use your hands.
Of course.
So this hand doesn't work, and this leg doesn't work. And no, he's not dead, but he was beaten so badly, career options are off the table for him.
Exactly.
I met another man here in Fresno, Latino male. He didn't move back fast enough when the cops said to get back. They were arresting someone else, and he was like, hey, that's my friend. And I think he was filming it on his phone, and they were like, get back. And maybe he was 1 or 2 feet too close. Maybe he wasn't. But their problem was he didn't move away fast enough. So an officer said, I feel threatened by you. That's all he said. And the next thing he knows, he's in the air. Hands come out of the ground behind him, pick him up, and it was some 8-foot tall cop grabbed him and slammed him on the car so hard, shattered his jaw,
Oh my God.
shattered this, shattered that. He's able to hold a job now, but for a year, basically the ability to do this was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And his crime was he didn't step back fast enough. They admit he didn't have a weapon. He wasn't the initial person they were talking about.
Yeah.
He didn't talk threateningly. He was standing there filming what he felt the police were abusing another person. And for that,
Yeah.
that's life-changing.
Absolutely. Well, according to the law, anything an officer tells you to do is a lawful order. They can say, sit down, shut up. They can say, do 10 jumping jacks. And if you
Right.
don't do what the hell they're doing, they can simply use that as a means to say you're not obeying a lawful order because they see themselves as being the law when they are not the law. They're the ones that's supposed to follow the law. They're the
Right.
ones that are supposed to make sure that the laws that legislators and we the people have supported in creating are enforced. But them arbitrarily being able to use their badge and their position of authority to say what the law is and dictate that is definitely unconstitutional. It is unlawful, and it makes them de facto members of the state. In which case, we definitely should not be supporting of that in any way, shape, or form.
It's a real issue. One of the things that, if I drive around Fresno like this and my car's clean, no problem. But I go visit a buddy of mine. He lives roughly at Bullard, Herndon area. That's North Fresno. And I like to go to Woodward Park and work out. And I like to run the hills, and it gets a little dusty. So during summer, I was just wearing a tank top. Now, if I go run the hills, and then I get in my car, and there's dust on my car,
All right.
and I'm wearing a tank top, and I have a little bit of dirt on me, and I drive through the exact same neighborhood in northern Fresno that I went through the night before wearing a suit, and my car was clean, suddenly I always find a police officer tailing me throughout the area until I leave.
Right.
When my car is clean and I wear a suit, there's no cops tailing me. I will see cops, they'll drive right by.
Mm-hmm.
When I look a little bit dirty and I'm wearing a tank top, still me. Still face, still shaven, hair calm. No, you look a little bit too ethnic.
Yeah.
And we notice that cops follow you. Now, that's just me. And law-abiding citizen, I have family in law enforcement. Obviously, there's good law enforcement, but it's real.
Absolutely.
It's real. And I can only imagine people who look the part all the time and can't do a whole much for it have to be living in terror every moment to just go home and go to work. And that's
Right.
not freedom. And that's not how life should be in a good country.
Yeah,
Period.
exactly. Yeah, I met a Hispanic gentleman at a reopened California protest, and he's a local business owner, owns a tattoo shop.
Okay.
Hispanic
okay.
gentleman. And that should tell you everything.
Where's this story going to go?
He's tatted up, from head to toe.
Yeah.
But again, has several businesses here in Fresno, I think throughout the state. So he's not only a business owner, but he's a job provider. to the people of this state.
And a taxpayer.
And a large taxpayer. You know, if you have several businesses and they're making so much in revenue, then California is going to make sure they're getting as large of a chunk as possible. So he's a big contributor towards, our tax revenue here in the state. And he told me he's been assaulted by cops almost every time he goes out. He says, I literally have to tell them I just got pulled over for this yesterday. And, and leave me alone, pretty much. Because he's always profiled as being someone that's suspicious. And from what I was told by a Sacramento CHP officer, was everybody looks suspicious. So if we're training,
oh my God,
if law enforcement in the state is being trained to assume that everybody is suspicious for whatever reason, and to use that as guise to again go out, profile them, stop them, interrogate them, prevent them from going on about their business without being impeded in any way, shape, or form, then something's wrong with the way that these officers are being trained as well. So there definitely needs to be some retraining of law enforcement officials in the state of California, and that's exactly what I will be doing with my criminal justice reform policies.
I see it a little bit differently. I think the cops are being trained, from what I've seen, to anybody who's lower class or appears to be lower middle class.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Is a threat.
Well, another thing is they know that if the person actually challenges it and they have to go to court,
and you don't have money, what are you going to do?
Exactly. Versus the person that does look like they may have a lot of money or some high-profile relationships or whatever the case may be. I saw a video where it was a white guy that had crashed his car somewhere in San Francisco, and the cops let him go. He was clearly drunk. You can look it up. It's a viral video. The guy was drunk, driving, crashed his car into several of the parked cars. Cops let him go. Reason being is because he said, "My father is a senator." So the roots of corruption go very deep. It's not just the money that's keeping them in power. It's also them, again, feeling like their job may be threatened if they happen to arrest a certain person of profile.
I was at the Blackstone and Shields intersection, and my window had been smashed out, so I taped it up with clear tape. Looked really not very well done. And it was like right after 2 p.m., so it's right when the bar's out, and I was not paying attention, so I kind of swerved into the next lane. I wasn't drinking. I was not paying attention.
I'll
so
take a drink to that.
I was not drinking. I was not under the influence of alcohol. I had swerved. So what happened was I was there at Shields and Blackstone, and the cops pull up next to me, and they start flashing their light through the window, like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, my window looks like garbage. And I just turn and I go, I said in my most business-friendly, what some people call white voice, I go, "Nothing going on here, officer. I'm having a good evening and returning home." And they go, "Okay, well, you get home safe, buddy."
Right.
And that was it. Now, my uncle, who always dresses well, but drives a lower income car and looks very Mexican. I understand I look visibly Caucasian to a lot of people. I'm Latino, but my uncle's a very dark-looking, ethnic-looking Mexican man. He always keeps that car clean. Always dresses in a polo shirt, perfectly ironed. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he always presents himself as clean and proper.
Respectable.
He was routinely stopped in Clovis.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, "Oh, we have a robbery out and you're a suspect." And he's like, "What?"
Right.
Like, what? He's like, "What? I would never rob something." And they're like, "Well, we heard something." And I think
Fit the description.
Yeah. And he's like, "I don't get to go to Clovis without worried that I'm going to be accused of a felony like murder or armed robbery. I don't know why. My car's clean. Tags are clean. I dress clean. I don't have a lot of money. My polo shirt's always ironed. I'm shaved. I just look really, really Mexican in a cheap older model Toyota." Why do I keep getting pulled over?
Mm-hmm.
When I wear a suit in a clean car, I never get pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
I was walking down the street going to work, and I got pulled over for fitting the description for a robbery. Now, I was working in the office at that time, so I'm wearing, slacks and a collared shirt, and this was actually in the winter, so I'm wearing a big overcoat. I have my lunch pail that I carry every day, a little lunch box that's blue,
Okay.
and I'm wearing blue headphones, and I'm carrying a blue umbrella, and I'm like, I fit the description? Did they say I had all of this? I'm 6'4". At that time, I had dreadlocks down to my shoulders. And I started to ask him, why are you stopping me over? Stopping me? Is it because I'm black? And one of the officers said yes. And within, I would say, 30 seconds, I was in handcuffs and thrown in the back of the police car. And of course, within an hour, they had released me after finding out, of course, I wasn't the person they were looking for. And I ended up suing Fullerton and getting awarded $100,000. So, and I was running for Fullerton City Council. I let people know, I will sue you, Fullerton, and I will take your tax dollars, or you can elect me city council, and I'll just make sure we get rid of corrupt guys like this police officer. And they chose to just pay me. So it's a change in mindset, and that's what I'm saying as far as us being able to get conversations like these to be heard by more people. Because if they actually see and hear what's going on in their own community opposed to what they're reading in news reports or what's being reported by the television, then maybe they'll think twice. Not all of these interactions with police officers are valid, are lawful. So when it comes to the guise of law and it being enacted upon us, if these lawmakers or law enforcers aren't going to abide by the same laws, what's the point of it? Here in Fresno, I just read a story about a man that was hit by a police officer, a CHP officer, who ran a stop sign and crashed into a car. He wasn't in a high-speed chase. He wasn't in pursuit of anyone. He wasn't even on call. He just was speeding, ran a stop sign, and killed this 69-year-old man just recently. So why is it that if that happened to us, we'd be in jail?
Right.
Of course.
Right.
If not under the jail. Meanwhile, this CHP officer is out on paid administrative leave until they complete an investigation. And the son, who lost his father, said, why are we allowing the CHP to investigate themselves? He's absolutely right.
Yes. They allowed the police to police the police.
Right.
And my response was, please. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. There's a lot of good cops. Obviously, we need law enforcement. Obviously, you need law and order. What we're talking about is that there is a clear ability for people to abuse
Absolutely.
the incredible power they have, basically carte blanche, and get away with it. And in this democracy, in this government, there's nothing that we the people really get to do about that other than just kind of complain and have misery for ourselves. Like
Right.
the two people that I know that had their lives changed by beaten by the
I hate to interrupt.
Well, one of them tried, and he was told, we're not going to really get anywhere because there's no real evidence.
See?
You look like a gangbanger. He couldn't even get any lawyers to do it. The other guy was previously homeless, and he was Caucasian, but he was homeless, and so that basically meant,
right.
You're homeless. No one's going to
Contact
believe
Greg Peacock. He'll fight for you. Trust me.
Greg Peacock.
Greg Peacock. He was the best attorney that I came across, and pretty much was told the same thing. He's told that by so many different people that have been assaulted by police officers.
It's not right. I mean, if you're...
They think it's a lost cause, and they see it as a civil rights abuse as being a uphill battle. So unless you have tons of money to pay for an attorney, a high-profile attorney that's willing to fight that for you, it seems as if you have to lose your life in order for there to be any type of financial compensation, because it's not even justice getting a lawsuit payment. I don't feel justified by getting the money that I received from the city of Fullerton.
Right.
What I did feel justified by is me ended up finding out that that cop had retired. You know, I wish he had gotten fired, but instead was given the opportunity to retire, and now is collecting a pension from we the people of California, taxpayers. But he's no longer out there threatening people of the public.
That's
with
at
his
least
position.
good. That's at least good.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to take a stance on that. I'll just say that that's why the original AB 392 law was very powerful. It was going to make it where the onus on the police was to make sure that they were doing the right thing, and they wouldn't just go, "Well, I'm a cop," tough. Exactly. They had to actually show it, and that's why those 3 key provisions we talked about were removed, so that we don't have to do this. Because right now, that bill was going to make it where every cop had to justify their actions, and now you have to justify your actions.
Right.
If you were abused, you have to prove that you were actually abused. So the difficulty's on you.
Right.
And this would have put the difficulty on the system, which would have radically changed the justice system as we've never seen before. So again, there are some good cops. Obviously, the police we need, but clearly, there's some sort of accountancy problem.
Exactly.
I'll say, and it ain't getting fixed by whatever they passed recently.
No, the empty laws.
Yeah. Okay. I'm almost out here, so I gotta go feed my addiction. Last 2 thoughts. Looking at this election, looking at everything you've done in the last year, what do you think are 2 key conclusions that people watching this should be aware of that they maybe aren't thinking of? Obviously, and I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way if I may, he's running for governor, libertarian, running on a libertarian principles, California values, low taxes, low regulation. He is registering as a Republican because they changed the system. It's the only way to run. So I got that out of the way. What I want to talk to the philosopher. 2 things. You folks in California need to know this. Maybe you didn't pick up on it. Somehow, something you've noticed, and maybe it's reflective of the election. You follow politics. You have some insight into this. What are 2 things that you've noticed and somehow relate to this election that you're pretty sure people aren't picking up on, or is it being talked about enough? Ignore me and speak right to the public, please.
Sure. Well, those 2 things I would say first is that an overwhelming majority is sick of the 2-party system. They're sick of the rhetoric tossed about between Republicans and Democrats. They're sick of the empty promises. And those people, although they are still the silent majority, were not present in this current election with the president. Even though you had a record number of people, come out and vote for either Trump or Biden or whatever the case may be, they still only reflect about 25% of our entire population. So you're not motivating, more than half of the country to even get behind and support you. But yet they're still living under those policies. So those people definitely should be inspired to vote next time around if they're given a great third option, I believe. So that's definitely coming. It's probably 1 election cycle away from having a libertarian president. Another thing I would say is people are sick of being taxed. They see what's happening with their money, and they're very aware that the buying power of our dollar is losing its strength. And
ooh, that's good.
Especially with, I guess, the growing concerns about the development of socialism in our country. I speak with Trump supporters all the time, and they say, well, I hate socialists. I hate Biden because he's proposing socialist, policies and changes. Well, Trump actually is a big socialist. If you look at what he did with bailing out these companies, corporations, large businesses with our tax dollars during this coronavirus lockdown. That is a socialist, approach to dealing with the situation, opposed to a conservative would have said, hey, you're a business, you took that risk, hang in there, things will get better. And, this money belongs to the taxpayers, the hardworking people of this country, not you. But he did give money to Pfizer and Kodak, which is a film company, to create a vaccine.
This is what I was hoping for.
Yeah, so he gave them money to help development of the vaccine. When again, these are multi-million-dollar companies, billion-dollar companies. If
They don't have the cash.
Exactly.
Okay.
Not to mention companies like Moderna also received money, taxpayer money, for development of a vaccine. But if you look at their stock profile right now, it's going up and up and up. So they're going to be they're profiting off of the suffering of we the people. And even though they're trying to make it seem like this coronavirus is a serious threat and we need to be...
we don't want to get cut by YouTube.
Right.
let's keep it on the politics side.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Well, when we're talking
I
about
love you,
the
Sam,
vaccine...
but I ain't doing it. So.
When we talk about a vaccine or development of a vaccine, we need to be wary because, again, it's being fast-tracked. It is something that is being funded by taxpayers. And when it boils down to our money and where it's being invested, it's not going into the pockets of the people that need it right now. You have people that have families and aren't able to put food on their table or keep their lights on, or even able to keep a roof over their heads. They're facing evictions and foreclosures of their homes that they've owned and have lived in for years. So we definitely should be making sure that we're focusing on the priority here, which is making sure that our body is taken care of. And the public body right now is suffering. So pretty soon they're going to scream out in pain. And I see that that bellowing starting at this time. It's only going to grow louder as time goes on.
Well said. Well said. Okay. I have one last question. I know I said I didn't, but one last one. And I was at a protest recently, and I asked all the people there. So Joe Biden said, this election is about the soul of America. 48% voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Now, when I was at that protest the other day, they're going, Trump doesn't represent America. His values don't represent America. That's not America. And they had their flags. And I go, okay. So just under half said it does. And you're saying that's not true. So if I paint half your body blue,